fellow bookworms to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and today we are going to be talking about a new favorite of mine, and that is The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. Absolutely love this book. I can't wait to talk about it. Before I do, though, I do want to just talk briefly about Sealed with a Kiss. I read this one this month, and I don't want to do like an individual video for it. So I'm just going to talk briefly about this one, and then we'll jump into The Once and Future Witches. Before I do though, go ahead and give this video a like. It really does help out the channel. And then don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on a thing. But let's talk about Sealed with a Kiss. I had read the first one. This is a duology, and I had read the first one, Cross My Heart, back in February. I had picked some of the romances that I had on my shelf. I'm really trying to work my way through some of these books that have been on my shelf forever. And so this was one of those, and pleasantly surprised that I really enjoyed it. And so when I found out it was a duology, I saw this one and I picked it up. And this one, I also ended up loving and hating. I think I would have enjoyed it if I hadn't read Cross My Heart, but because this one was so strong, this one just kind of fell short. And so it was solid, but I just didn't enjoy it quite as much. So in the first one, you have Lily and Ty, and they're the romantic interest in this one, and they're reconnecting, and Hunter is their best friend. And then he has Molly is kind of his romantic interest, and they don't really end in a good place in the first one. So there is a little author's note that she received a bunch of letters wanting to know what happens with Molly and Hunter, and so she ended up writing this book. And it almost feels like because of that, the plot line wasn't as well developed. It really focuses more on the romance aspect and kind of trying to tie their story off versus fully developing the plot line. And so that's kind of what let me down. Like, I just don't think the plot line was as strong. I think it was too heavily focused on the romance, and that was kind of being forced versus kind of naturally occurring throughout what was happening, if that makes sense. So it just didn't meld together quite as well as I would like. Still a solid read, and if you're looking for a romance, I mean, it definitely fits the bill. But basically, Molly went and found her father, and then he gets arrested for killing his best friend and business partner, and so she ends up needing Hunter's help. And so she reaches out to him, and so they have like all these unresolved feelings and like wounds because they didn't end on a good note. And so they're kind of resolving that while working to save her father. But yeah, I think, overall it's a solid read, especially if you're looking for just a nice, quick romance. But I just don't think it was quite as strong as the first one. There are several characters in this one that I really enjoyed a lot. Molly's grandmother was one. She also has this teenage sister who's full of teenage angst. But I thought she was really well done and such. So yeah, overall very solid, just not quite as good as the first one. Either way, though, like if you're looking for just a quick, easy romance to read, these both definitely fit the bill. Definitely going to be keeping them on my shelves. Like I said, I really enjoyed this first one, and I enjoyed the second one enough that I can see myself rereading both of these again. So they'll be staying, even though, like I said, Sealed with a Kiss wasn't quite as good as Cross My Heart. But I did give it a 3 stars. Like I said, pretty solid. So, but let's go ahead and talk about the Once and Future Witches. I know that's why I'm here. So, yeah, this one I thought was so well done. This is one of the books I really wasn't planning on buying. Uh, I know I recently did like a huge book haul just because I kind of needed a self care mental health day. And this one I actually bought before that. I was out buying some of the exceptions to me not buying new books this year, which was to complete my Nora Roberts collection and complete any series that I knew I wanted to complete, series that I knew I was going to keep and I needed to add to. And ended up seeing this one on the shelf, and I had seen it on BookTube, and I knew this was one I was going to really enjoy. So I was like, "Oh, that one sounds so good," and my husband ended up convincing me to buy it. Um, and so yeah, I also wasn't planning on reading it anytime soon. I did put it on last month's TBR, kind of as like a reward if I hit a certain mark. I was gonna read it as kind of a reward to myself because I've really been wanting to read it. And I didn't quite hit that mark, and so all those books ended up getting rolled over. And so I rolled over this one as well. I was planning on reading it at bedtime, just a couple chapters each night while still prioritizing some of my other reads. That obviously ended up not working out. I was enjoying it so much. I just wanted to read it. Like kept wanting to read it over others. And so I ended up, got about a quarter of the way through and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna sit down and read it. And so I ended up sitting down and reading it and finishing it. And this book, I mean, I just love everything about it. I'm not gonna do a call pile rating on this one either because I ended up giving it tens across the board. So it ended up, getting a full 5 stars easily for me. And I do see, aspects of this that other people might not like as much. So I don't think it's a book that's necessarily for everyone, but for me, it hit the spot perfectly. I loved it. Kind of takes a lot of inspiration from old fairy tales, but she manages to kind of change it just enough to really suit the book and the stories themselves. So even though there's a lot of fairy tales, there are little changes to them, which I thought was really cool. And I loved everything about it. Like I loved the evil and the darkness in this book. I loved how that was done. I'm a sucker for three sisters anyway, like three siblings in general, but especially if they're three sisters. I'm one of three sisters, so that's one trope. Like Nora Roberts does that a lot where she has three sisters or three friends, that are acting as sisters. And I've always really, really enjoyed that. And so this book, knowing that it had the three sisters, definitely hit the mark. And there's kind of this reoccurring theme within like the fairy tales and the story itself of the crone, the mother, and the maiden, which again you have that number three. And I really like that, and I love how those were presented not only in the sisters themselves but also later on in the book as well. And I'm trying not to give away too much because you really need to read it. But I really liked how that was reoccurring and how that was done. And I love the feminist twist on this book. Like, it's very much about bringing magic back in the world, but at the same time, it's specifically women's magic. Because it is a little bit misleading, I would say, because it's like there once was magic, there's not, but there will be again, which is not true because there is little bits of magic still in the world, and you see that, and it's kind of passed down from generation to generation, like nursery rhymes and fairy tales and things like that. So you see that over and over again. So the magic is not completely gone; it's just been squashed, specifically women's magic, and so I really like that twist. And how she worked that in. But yeah, I thought it was done very, very well, and I really enjoyed the three sisters. Like I said, you have June, who is the youngest one. She would represent the maiden, and she's kind of the wild child though, and she's always ready for a fight. And then you have Agnes, who is the middle sister, but she almost takes on the role of the oldest sister because she's very steady and strong. And then you have Bella, who is the oldest sister, but she's more quiet and reserved and very bookish. And so you also have like that academic aspect there as well, which I always enjoy in my stories. And yeah, I thought it was really, really well done. But they're really trying to not only bring back magic, but women's magic and fight for women's rights is really the premise of the book. So it kind of goes deeper than just magic itself, even though that's kind of where it's centered at. But women's magic has been strong or squashed because it makes women stronger, and they're trying to keep women weak. And so yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. And one of the criticisms I saw was that there was too many characters. But I mentioned multiple times, I really struggle with a lot of characters in my books. So I've learned how to cope with that. And so if I don't think they play a very strong part, I'll kind of just not worry about trying to remember them or anything like that because it's a struggle for me. And so in this case, yes, there's a lot of characters around these three, but there's only a handful that are important enough to remember. The rest kind of fulfill the same role in the book and in the women's stories. And so it's not necessarily that you need to know exactly who each of these women are, which I think, again, can hang some people up, but I've already managed to find a way to cope with that. So it wasn't a huge deal for me at all. And I will say that I thought the author did a good job because it's so women focused and feminist focused that that gender role aspect could definitely be polarizing, but she has good LGBTQ representation. Um, and so I think bringing in that representation was very important to the story to make sure it wasn't polarizing at all. And one thing you do, I don't know if I should mention this, it's a little bit of a spoiler. I'm going to go ahead and say it because I want to talk about it. But it's a little bit of a spoiler, not a huge one, so but you can go ahead and skip forward a little bit if you need to. But there is a trans character, and because it's women's magic, bringing in that trans character, I think, was done very well, and it was important because you have this trans character and in the beginning a little bit nervous, obviously because it's women's magic and magic isn't really in this world at this point, being used. And so how am I going to be able to do women's magic? Um but you know I'm not speaking very well, very eloquently on this, but it was done very, very well and very tastefully. Having that aspect too. So even though it's really focusing on women's magic, it's is more about whether you identify as a woman or not, just that strength. And you have the men too that come in and help them. And I don't know, I thought it was done very, very well. And I loved every aspect of this book. I'm really, really hoping there's going to be a sequel. Know that I think it was meant to be kind of I don't know, I think it was meant to be more of a standalone, but they're fighting so hard for the future of women that I'm really, really hoping she will do a book that shows that future. Because I want to see what that future looks like. And they're definitely, I think she's able to do that with a specific character in the book, follow them and show what that future looks like. So I'm really, really hoping that the author will do that because I definitely want to read it. Like, I want to know. And it'd even be cool if she could do like show, how it could have been if they hadn't succeeded and then what it is because they succeeded. I think that like dynamic would be really, really cool. I don't know if the author will do that or not, but I really hope they will because like I said, I want more of this for sure. So the ending was kind of it made sense, like it worked for the story, but it wasn't the ending I quite wanted. But yeah, I think the author did an amazing job with this book and did a really, really good job because it is so feminist based and focused on women's magic that she created space for more than that, more than just women and such. So Yeah, amazing book. Can't sing its praises enough. I know it's not for everyone, but I think a lot of people, even if you don't enjoy it as much as I did, I think it would still be an enjoyable read. So if you kind of been on the fence, I say definitely give it a try. I'm gonna try to find their other book, The 10,000 Doors of January. I want to read that now, and I'm definitely gonna be keeping an eye out in the future. Before I go, though, I will just say a trigger warning. This does deal with abuse. um the sisters, have kind of a rocky past and such, and so it does deal with abuse, so keep that in mind, going into it, because that's pretty dark. So but yeah, definitely I say worth the read for sure. Worth giving it a try, though I see where people might not enjoy it quite as much as I did. So I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.